This is Cydni.
And I'm Sher. And each week we get together to share with you a message of hope.
It is through our own study and our personal experiences that we offer the reminder to not only seek the light,
but be the light. You can find peace, and there is hope.
And as long as one of us is slightly caffeinated, there will be laughter.
Today's topic is the value of learning.
And we're so glad you're here.
I'm forging my way through the tip top. I'm living my life through the drip drop.
So ironically, I was just getting ready to ask Cydni our first question about learning, and I just got a text from my niece Lily. So shout out to Lily. She's super excited that she just got her driver's permit. So way to go, Lily.
Yay,
Proud of
Lily.
you.
Learning something new.
Way to learn something new, and I am definitely wearing a helmet while I drive from now on.
That's not going to be enough. There's so many 16-year-olds out there and so few helmets.
That's true.
There's so many minivan moms. I put myself in that category. It's just hard. You have to throw back fruit by the foot while you're trying to get to a soccer game. And meanwhile, you got to make sure your brows look legit and text friends and update your status in Marco Polo. It's a lot. We have a lot on our shoulders. Don't listen to that, Lily. It was a joke. I don't do any of that. I focus. Hands 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, speed limit 100%.
I'm definitely keeping my helmet in my truck.
You do go the speed limit.
I do.
I let that go about you. I feel like you have to go at least 5 over. So we just came back from Paris. Not to brag, but we're cultured. They don't have lanes when they drive.
No, they don't.
They go wherever they fit.
They do, and
or
it's
don't
scary.
fit. I loved it.
You know, when I was in Paris, I was on a bus, and a car literally ran into the bus. It just bounced off of us and then just kept going.
Why can't it be like that? That's less drama.
That's true.
You got a fender bender. Continue on.
It was bumper cars.
Yeah, I loved it, which did cause a little bit of a marital issue because Ben drives like that here in America. And I sit there and I'm like, you're going too fast. Did you put your blinker on? You know, like a good wife who cares.
Right.
I do that for him.
Good.
I use my energy for him to help him drive better. And there I was like, you're such a good driver, Uber man. And Ben's like, are you kidding me? I've been doing this for years. I'm like, I know, and it's dangerous. But he's used to it. And he can't understand what I'm saying. So
it all works out in the end, I guess.
Anyway, good job, Lily.
Good job. And I will keep the helmet handy. And now I'm going to ask you, Cydni, how do you learn new things?
Well, sometimes you just got to dive in and learn them because I think sometimes it's mandatory to learn new things. So there's different things going on in my mind right now because sometimes you have to learn something new quickly. Speaking of driving, I grew up in a small town. We drove behind tractors and stopped for cows. But when I moved here, suddenly unexpected and just didn't go back home, I remember Ben needed a ride downtown for school. And I drove down with him. I was in the passenger seat. Suddenly it occurred to me when he got out that I had to get home. I had never driven on a freeway in my life. And I said, how do I get back? And he's like, oh, you'll figure it out. And then he shut the door and left. And I had to learn. That was before, not to age myself, but I sure didn't have Google Maps. I think it was a flip phone and on the freeway, but you know, somehow I did it. I got home. I survived that. I learned something new.
You just had to jump in and do it.
Which I do well. I learned how to do that at a young age. So sometimes you have to jump in and do it. And sometimes I think it's just an attitude. Can you teach an old dog a new trick?
And you're looking at me
directly.
So I guess I'm the old dog in the story.
I wasn't going to say that.
So can you? I don't really think you can.
You're learning how to podcast. That's new.
Yeah, that's true.
But I cannot teach a new dog new tricks because I have a dog that's newer. He's only 2 years into life and I haven't taught him how to do anything. I see on YouTube stuff when they shoot the dog with their finger and they're like pretend to fall over dead. And I just shake my head at my dog and I'm like, why can't you do that? Because you're a new dog. You should know new tricks. But I'm not much of a trainer.
And I just got a new dog.
And he's adorable. Shout out, Rudy.
He's just obediently laying on the floor.
So you, Sher, can teach a new dog new tricks.
Even though I'm an old dog.
Can you teach an old dog a new trick?
Probably not.
Yes, you can. When we were talking, I immediately thought of the podcast. We had zero idea how to do this. And I feel like we have like a 5% idea now how to do this.
Maybe a little less.
A 3.7 idea
There you go.
how to do this. And so we've been learning something new. And the worst thing that I've had to learn is you taught me how to start citations. And I was sweating when you were teaching me how to use a computer because I don't do that.
Which is really ironic because I'm the old dog and I'm the tech person here. There is something wrong.
I have an old
in
soul.
this.
I like the wilderness and meditation. I don't want a computer and technology.
Ooh, actually, I'm not the tech person. So if there are any tech issues at all, it's all Cydni's fault.
I'll accept I can be a pinata for pain.
Ooh, I like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So my go-to for this is just an attitude.
I think for me, sometimes I might get a little obsessed with learning new things, whether it's a history topic or learning how to do the podcast, like what equipment and how to edit and all the things. I got a little obsessed with it. And sometimes that works to my advantage. And sometimes I need to rein it in a little bit. But for me, I had really good examples. I felt like my parents, they were 100% self-sufficient and they always were up to the challenge of learning how to do anything. So if it came to any life survival skills, things like that, or historical topics, they were always up to learning about it. And I love that example of just being able to just jump in and do it. And honestly, my brothers are a lot like that. I am definitely the dumb one in the family.
Don't say that. You're not.
No, it's true. Like if it came to survival skills, like if there was a zombie apocalypse right now, I would be dead because I don't know how to do anything.
I will not accept this at all. I feel like the people who die first are the winners.
Okay,
So
good. I'm down then. That's true. I don't want to be around.
I don't want to figure out how to cook oatmeal on an open fire. I want to fight zombies. I tried that once in the virtual reality. I tried fighting zombies with my 10-year-old son. I almost cried. It was so scary. I asked them to take it off. I was like, could you take this off? And they're like, this is funny. And they're laughing. Do you know how expensive therapy is going to be for virtual reality?
It's true.
I was so scared. So, see, you're smart. You're going to die first.
Okay,
I'm proud
good.
of you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Honestly, though, I think the most important thing is you just have to be willing to try. Because sometimes you'll find that maybe you actually are pretty good at something. And sometimes you're just not, but at least you tried and you know. But I think it's good just to be open-minded and just to be willing to try to learn new things, no matter how old you are or how young you are. Just be open-minded and being willing to. I think that's the first step.
I love that. And I think having the right attitude about learning also helps, because something I talked to my middle schooler about is elementary was fun for him. But I told him middle school is going to be more fun because he gets to pick classes he actually has an interest in learning, and he'll discover new things. And because of that, he decided that he wanted to play the cello, and he practices the cello and he's wonderful. And it's awesome to see him do that. And I feel like the world is so massive with all the knowledge is at our fingertips. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in a traditional way of learning or traditional things that we need to learn, but there's so much out there. I have heard before that the knowledge is at our fingertips, but people know less than ever. And I think sometimes we overwhelm ourselves with a little bit of information about everything. And I think the thing to do is to adjust your attitude and recognize that we live in such an amazing time on this earth that anything you want to learn is searchable for free. I love that.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
I think that if you change your attitude about that and have the excitement for learning, enthusiasm for learning, I think sometimes it will give you a new, renewed purpose in your life. As I was preparing for this, I listened to an interview with a woman named Vanessa Van Edwards. And an idea she had that I really loved was having a learning bucket list, because we have life bucket list of places you want to go or places you want to see, but do you have a bucket list of things that you would want to learn? And she mentioned in it that something she was learning gave her a purpose in life. And I thought that was such an interesting idea to spend time writing down things that you'd actually want to learn that would make you feel excited about life. And I feel when you learn new things, it refreshes you. And recently, Ben and I, our life has been so chaotic this year. There's been a kid sick since Halloween, and it will not stop. They're just rotating through. And then sports has been a lot, and it just felt really disconnected. I mean, this is marriage. It happens all the time. There's connecting and disconnecting and connecting again. And I thought it was pretty cool this time. Something that we decided to help with our crazy life and busy schedule is we would sit down and spend time reading books together. By that, I mean audio. And by that, I mean, we usually fall asleep. But you know what? There's effort.
Yes.
And it renewed me so much personally. I don't know if he feels the same about it, but he picked the first book and it's been taking us so long to get through it, but we're going to, and I get to pick the next book. And I think sometimes learning something new, whether it's alone or with somebody, it is the greatest refresher and it gives you purpose and meaning when life gets kind of dull.
I love what you said. That fits in perfect with the next question. Why is it important to keep learning throughout your life? When you are learning new things, it does refresh you and help you grow. It gets you excited about life again. One of the things that I've noticed throughout my teaching career is that sometimes I have students that refuse to learn. They will not learn and they just sit there like slugs and they're bored and they're sad and all the things. But I'm like, if you would try to do anything, I try to make a connection with them and ask them, what are you interested in? Tell me anything that you like doing. And they don't like doing anything, nothing. There's no things that they like, nothing. Then they wonder why they don't like school. They don't like anything or anyone. It's because they're not putting forth any effort. And it always breaks my heart because if they would try to learn anything, it would help them get excited about life in general. And I don't want to be like that. And I am getting older. I don't want to turn into a slug like one of my students that hates everybody and everything. Don't even start.
Can you teach an old slug
a
new trick?
Probably not. But I don't want to be like that. So I really do want to continue to try to learn new things for as long as I possibly can because it does make life more exciting.
So I think that's just an age thing. Just like in high school, I put more effort in getting out of assignments than just doing them. So being that eighth graders are probably not
Well,
too
it's
many.
not cool. It's not cool to be smart or learn when you're
Right. You just
middle
want to be with
school.
your friends.
Yeah.
Who
that's
also
cool.
just want to be with their friends. And
Right.
nobody's like, yeah, I just want to hang out and watch the History Channel together.
Right, exactly.
But Rock, he's pretty great about teaching me how to use my iPhone. And that's been helpful.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he's taught me like 7 ways to turn off my flashlight. Because he's like, your flashlight is on again. It's so embarrassing. Sometimes you can learn from the youth too.
That's good too, because I'm glad Rock is there to help you because my students are always there to help me when my flashlight's on. But mine's usually in my pocket. So,
Which is worse.
yeah. So
That's
it's
the next
my,
generation.
right. My pants are glowing and then they're like, your flashlight's on. And thanks again.
You have
Thank
a fork in one
Yeah,
pocket and you have a flashlight on the
Yeah,
other.
exactly. I'm the
She's
coolest.
prepared, acting like you can't survive a zombie.
That's right. I'm ready. Bring it on. I have
You're
a
ready.
fork and a flashlight. I'm good to go. So speaking of school and why it's important to learn new things, I have a quote from Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson said, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. So what Thomas Jefferson is saying is if you are choosing not to learn, it is impossible to have that attitude of not learning and be free at the same time and be in a civilized country. Those things are impossible. They never have existed and they never will. And I want to remind you, this isn't talking about degrees and diplomas and going to a university. This is talking about taking care of yourself and just learning how to help other people and learning how to help your family, learning how to help yourself. And most importantly, learning right from wrong. Just as an example of this, Frederick Douglass, who is one of my favorite American heroes, Frederick Douglass was a slave. He became an abolitionist. This is what he said about this topic. It was illegal for slaves to learn how to read. And so Frederick Douglass, when his master was out of town, and his master's wife, which was referred to as his mistress, she would read out loud the Bible, and he loved it. So when his master was out of town, he would always be like all happy because then he knew that he would get to hear Bible passages and scriptures.
Wouldn't that be the day when the mistress reads the Bible out loud? Be like, is your husband gone? Can you pull that leather bind book out? Nobody has to know.
Okay. So back to the mistress. He loved it so much that he actually asked her if she would teach him how to read, which again was illegal, but she agreed to it. And then he started picking it up fairly quickly. She was so proud of him that she actually told her husband. And she said, look what I've taught Frederick. And her husband, his master, lost his brain. And this is a quote from Frederick Douglass. This is what his master said. If he learns to read the Bible, it will forever unfit him to be a slave. He should know nothing but the will of his master and learn to obey it. And Frederick Douglass said that fueled him more than anything else. So now his mistress was no longer allowed to teach him how to read, but she had given him a start. And his master made him furious. So he was going to do this on his own. So he did learn how to read and he did learn how to write. And eventually he was able to run away. And once he ran away, he was able to start his own newspaper where he made a big push to free the slaves and organized abolitionist movements. He also wrote books and he went on speaking tours. And this is actually a famous quote from Frederick Douglass. He said, "Knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave." So when I am teaching this to my students, the reason we want to learn in general is because knowledge is what makes us so that we are not dependent on people. We will be free to make our own decisions and choices.
I love that. That quote's going to stick out for me forever. So thank you for sharing it.
You're welcome.
Expanding my mind. But it makes me think of how you become a slave by not knowing. And you have to learn how to think for yourself. Mm-hmm. You have to learn how to form your own opinions and your own thoughts, not just listen to what's on the news and accept that as truth. If you do that, then you are a slave to information that might not be accurate.
Exactly.
And I was listening to a speaker who talked about if you have two books and you read both of them and they have completely different opinions, what are you supposed to do with that? And he said, what you're supposed to do is you read both of them and you sit there and you think about it and form your own thoughts and your own opinion and become your own person.
Yeah.
And if you're your own person, then you're not a slave.
That's really good advice. I love that. And we should be looking at different opinions. And it's okay to read and learn from somebody else that maybe you don't agree with, because if nothing else, it will help you to understand why you're right or why you're wrong. And there's no harm in that.
I felt that way through COVID. I'd listened to political sides, both political sides. And I thought at the end that everyone was crazy. And I didn't trust any of them. That was my own thought was, I don't like what they said and I don't like what they said. And so, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and watch and listen to murder podcast instead, which was not a wise thing to do, but that's what I did until I started reading my scriptures day and night. When we lived in Colorado, I remember this sweet little elderly woman who didn't talk too much, but one day she got up and she was speaking and she told us that she learned how to read in her 50s. And this was not that long ago. We lived there 10 years ago. And she said that she learned to read by reading the scriptures.
That is awesome.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, that is so great.
Because I feel like if you don't know how to read at that age, then I think it would be really easy to give up. And that's why the attitude matters so much, because we old dogs can learn new tricks. We can learn new things. And that can free us and fuel us. And it could just spark interest and talents and purpose.
I love that. I also think it's important when you're learning to keep everything in perspective and what is most important, because Paul said when he was talking about the last days in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 7, Paul wrote about the last days again, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. So all of this learning, it doesn't do any good if you don't learn the correct principles. If you're learning the wrong things, it doesn't really do much good.
Like the murder podcast did.
So rather than the murder podcasts, knowing what those correct principles are is super important. So because that is how you come, as Paul said, that is how you come to the knowledge of the truth. Going back to some history quotes, Samuel Adams said, if virtue and knowledge are diffused among the people, they will never be enslaved. This will be their great security. So our great security is having virtue and having knowledge. That's what will keep us free. And John Adams said that there are two educations. One should teach us how to make a living and the other how to live. So those are the things like where we should be going, right? And just one final thing, if we ever get confused about virtue or how to live, what those words are meaning, John Adams is going to clarify it for us. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. So the most important thing is to find your moral compass that will teach you right from wrong. And that is our greatest security to stay free as an individual and as a nation, is having those two things put together, having virtue and having knowledge. Those two combined will keep us free. Because honestly, if you don't have that moral compass, it doesn't matter how smart you are. And I just had this other thought. I have a cousin who has severe dyslexia, and school was difficult for him. We're the same age. We went from elementary to high school together. He is such a great example to me because he never gave up and he just kept going. And his life is beautiful. He has a great family. He has a great job. He has a great life and he's happy. So I just want to make sure that we understand that learning is about you improving yourself wherever you are. That's what's important, is you improving where you are for the benefit of yourself and others, and then combining it with that moral compass. And those two combined is what gives you the potential to have a beautiful and joyful life.
It's interesting to notice how often they talk about knowledge equals freedom. I was listening to a speech by Abdul Kalam, and he defines knowledge. Since there's been so many definitions, I'm going to tell you what he said. He said, knowledge equals creativity plus righteousness plus courage. So then he says, what is creativity? And he replied to his own question with, learning yields creativity. Creativity leads to thinking. Thinking provides knowledge. Knowledge makes you great. That's what he said about creativity. About righteousness, he said, when there is beauty in the character, there is harmony in the home. And when there's harmony in the home, there is peace in the world. And about courage, he said, to have courage to learn something new, have courage to think differently, to invent, to solve problems, to travel. And speaking of travel, I just got back from Paris.
Oh my goodness.
Europe.
I didn't know that.
It's in Europe.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like the Eiffel Tower.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway.
I didn't know that. Thank you. Thanks for that clarification, Cydni.
If I could do accents, I would have through this whole thing. When people come back from Paris and I can't though. I will sound like a Southern
goodness
redneck person, and which I think is how I sound. So
maybe we should change this episode to miracles, because it is a miracle you can't do that. So I don't have to listen to it.
I thought you were going to call it, today's episode is Cydni went to Paris.
So anyway, Cydni just got back from Paris.
I did.
Continue.
Yes. Okay. And I will admit, I've been pretty nervous to travel overseas. And I think sometimes we don't learn because of fear. Ben and I were supposed to go to Paris actually in 2020, and we did not due to a pandemic. If you've heard of it?
Vaguely.
Okay. We were supposed to go, and I remember feeling so much dread before we even got to the pandemic. It was like December. Ben was very excited. He's like, we're going to fly into Germany and this is what we're going to do. And I just felt so scared. I didn't have this world traveler seed within myself. I like to be sure of where I'm at, and I do like to try new things, but only when I'm comfortable. And so I thought of the difference this time, especially because we were taking our kids. So I thought it would be even more scary, but I just felt ready for it. And now that I have done it, I don't feel scared at all. I've survived the driving over there, the language barrier, a different culture, the time change, and it was amazing. I had the best time. I want to go back.
Where were you again?
We were in Paris.
Oh, okay.
So I think sometimes you just have to, like we said, dive into things and not let fear stop you, because it could be on the other side, the creativity that maybe you're missing in your life, or just a new talent, a gift. I think we've already said that, but don't be afraid. Just do it. And then once you do it, you can learn that you actually can do it, that you can survive. And then you might want to do it again and do it better. So baby steps. Start as a baby, you do nothing, and then you learn to crawl and then walk and then run. And then we're back to laying in bed. So get out there while you can.
So as we were talking about why it's important to learn, one of the thoughts I just had as you were saying, let's have that good attitude, which I agree with, but how do you keep that enthusiasm for learning when life has a way of just beating the crap out of you?
Good question. Right, let's just end it.
Yeah, I know. 'Cause I don't want to be grumpy, but life, it gets hard, and then it takes that joy of wanting to learn and wanting to try, because you just keep getting whacked in the head.
I think the key here is going to be patience, because it is harder as you get older to learn new things. That is a fact. That's why that quote exists. It is harder to learn new things sometimes. And I've tried neurofeedback and I've learned a lot about it, that your brain truly creates new neural pathways when you learn something new. And I found the most fascinating thing is that if you have a bad habit, that neuro pathway in your mind, it's big. It's like a big tube. So if you have a bad habit, there's a big tube in your head of like, this is what I like.
I have lots
of big tubes.
I do. Lots of big tubes in my head.
But they found that you can starve it and change. So if you ignore, for me, I always am going to be like, well, there's a huge neurofeedback for Taco Bell and Oreos in my brain. My brain likes it. It's happy there. It's like, that's a strong tube. But you can starve it and you can learn to say no to yourself and you can learn to break bad habits. But you could also learn to say yes to yourself and create new habits that are positive and beneficial to your life and to those around you. But a new pathway actually is created, but it's like a string and it's tiny and small. But if you keep feeding it, one will starve and the other one will grow. But it is a process and there's science backing in this. So it is a process. You can't just pick up something in that very day unless you're a gifted human, which neither of us know any.
Yeah, I'm out.
We're not those gifted people. And so I think the key here really is to have patience with yourself, that when you're learning something, I mentally can picture in my mind a neural pathway of this is just a little string and I'm going to build. Our brain is a muscle. How often do we actually work it out? Or how often are we just in a routine of doing what we do? Because that's what our pathways have always done and that's what we created. But it's time to scramble up your brain and create new pathways and do new things and to grow what you want to grow. So if it's, for me, like reading a book versus just audiobook, that's going to take a little bit longer because I don't spend a lot of time just sitting and actually reading, but I listen to audiobooks. I'm just adding that so people know that I listen to audiobooks. I did not listen to one in Paris though.
Oh, this is really intolerable.
I also thought something that I really liked when I was looking up this topic was to discuss the difference between knowledge, information, and wisdom. So knowledge is facts. It's information, skills through experience or education. It's reading a book and now you have some knowledge about something. Mm-hmm. Understanding is comprehending the information that you've read. And then wisdom is the application of knowledge and understanding. It's learned through experiences and using that information to make the best possible decision in the future. Also, it goes back to the moral compass, the best possible decision. So you've gathered information and then you're applying it. Now you have wisdom because you've learned, like you read that the stove is hot and then you've cooked something on the stove and then you burned your hand. And now you know that through your wisdom that if you touch the stove, it is hot. We all have a lot more wisdom than we recognize because of the things that we have experienced and gone through. Our hearts have been shaped a certain way to help others go through it or to help ourselves not go through it again. Sometimes it's preventable, sometimes it's not. But every single thing that we experience, that we go through, can offer us wisdom. That is why we go through the things that we go through, to help us become wise. But it's so easy to just throw that away and not take a moment to recognize what it is. And if we do take a moment to recognize what it is, the wisdom that you actually have through the experiences that you've had, then you can be a great force of good in this world.
I love all of that. As you were talking, I thought this is why you don't want to kick old dogs out to the curb, is because there is a lot of wisdom in older people. The things that I was able to learn from my parents and my grandparents, they have a lot of wisdom. Or when I was a new teacher, the wisdom I gained from my coworkers that had taught for a while, that was invaluable. What I was able to learn from them. We can learn from other people and the wisdom that they've gained. And I think sometimes we're hesitant to share it.
Right. I remember one time I was sitting at church and it was just a few younger mothers and women and a few great grandmothers sitting around. And one of them said, "Oh, don't pass the mic to me. I'm just an old woman. I have nothing to say." And I remember thinking, I did not feel that way. I could listen to her speak all day. And I know all of us know someone who's a great grandmother who you really could listen to all day because of the wisdom that is there, the insight, the perspective, the stories that they have. And I think aging is just truly undervalued in our world. We're trying to figure out how to not have eye bags, which, oh boy, do I after Paris. Jet lag. Nothing to do with my age.
It's all my age. I didn't go to Paris.
We are so focused on our outward appearance of not aging that we don't spend the time valuing our minds of what we have gone through, what we have seen, what we have learned through mistakes that we made again and again. Like, for instance, we got a dog, speaking of dogs, and I grew up on a farm. And I said, when I'm older, I'm going to rebel by never having an animal. But then my family, they cornered me and they ruined my life by getting a dog. Cher loves dogs. So you don't have to unfollow our podcast because one of us really loves animals.
And her dog's super cute and loves me.
He does love you. So I should have learned from that experience that I don't do so well taking care of animals. I'm not going to hurt them, but I don't want to take care of it. And I should have learned. But you know what happened? I'll tell you what happened. We went to a reptile show. Guess who has a snake and a dog? And then furthermore, may I tell you, Cher, that I had to buy a mouse for the snake because it has to eat. Ew. And the snake would not eat the mouse. So guess who had for a very long time a dog, a pet snake, and a pet mouse? Did you know that they love peanut butter? Because I fed it because I had to take care of it.
Do you still have the snake?
No. Oh, yes. Snake, we do. Snake is actually not that big of a deal. He just does his thing. The mouse, I cried and returned it to the store. And I was like, please take it. Our snake won't eat it right now. And it's making me sad. I had a picture. I was like, look at our pet snake and mouse being best friends. I gave it like spinach topped with peanut butter and a little strawberry.
You sent it to me.
Oh, yeah. Did I?
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
It's cute,
terrible.
Right?
I don't want a pet snake.
Well, I should have learned. So this is the point, is that we should learn from our experiences as well. We should learn to not make the same mistake. If I end up with another pet, then please bring on the zombies and the earthquake because I don't want it. So we must learn from our experiences too.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to point out that, yes, we can learn from our own experiences, but sometimes we can learn from other people's experiences. For example, I just remember I don't even know how old I was. I'm going to guess 5 or younger. And we were in our house and I don't even remember which brother it was, but one of my brothers smarted off to my mom. He said something really smart aleck to her. And before my mom could respond, he didn't realize that my dad was actually just in the next room and heard it. And I will never forget the angry look on my dad's face. And my brother made the horrible mistake of running away. And my dad chased him. And I remember hiding in the corner as my brother ran past me. And then my brother made the terrible mistake of running down the stairs. And that's where my dad caught him, was on the stairs. And then there was tumbling down the stairs and my dad yelling at him, "Don't you ever talk to your mother like that again." Now, I learned from that lesson, I will never, ever smart off to my mom, at least when my dad's around. No, but that's what I learned, is that was not tolerated in this house. So I think we can gain wisdom from learning from other people. So I just want to tell my brothers, thank you for that example. So I didn't have to learn from it until I was a teenager.
I can relate to that. That's why I've never tried marijuana. Thanks, brother.
See, we can learn. But something else, though, is sometimes, at least for me in my life, I have found that sometimes it is hard to keep that good attitude and enthusiasm. Now, I want to point this out. I am not a therapist, nor do I know anything about that. I need to learn. I've been learning a lot from Cydni, actually.
Not that I'm a therapist. I've just been around them.
About mental health in general. It's good for me to learn that. But for me, so I am only talking about what works for me. Sometimes when things happen, I give myself a day. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to be miserable and grumpy today. But then the next day, I give myself a job. And I know I get that from my dad, who was always down for giving everyone, their dog, their cat, their grandma, a job. And so I'll give myself a job the next day, and giving myself a project or something to learn usually helps pull me out of it. I feel good about myself when I accomplish something, even if it's just unloading the dishwasher or mowing the lawn. That's when I feel good about myself. And when I learn something new, it helps me to feel good about myself in the direction that I'm going. So I know life beats the crap out of you, but giving myself little tasks to learn and to accomplish, that actually helps me not feel quite as beat up, because it makes it so that I feel like I actually have control over something. I can't control all the chaos and life kicking me in the butt, but I can control learning something new and unloading the dishwasher.
I love that. That's the process. You've learned something, but it's the application. The action is where the wisdom comes. And you just illustrated a perfect example of the knowledge of how to do something, but the application and the action of doing it, that results in the wisdom. And who doesn't want to be wise?
Absolutely.
Truly wise. And also, I just thought the men and women in the Bible, the ones who are called on, the wise ones, they were always humble enough to be taught. They were humble enough to be corrected. And that is the scripture that you shared, that if you're too learned, that you won't hear the word of God. Those who hear the word of God are those who are meek enough and humble enough to be taught, and they are students of God. And that is our purpose here, is to become a student, not a follower, but a lifelong student. I just think of how many times Ben, who is very wise, will tell me some very solid and sound advice over and over and over again, but then I won't listen. But then I'll be standing in line at a gas station and a woman will say the exact same thing. And I'll go home and be like, Ben, I heard the most wise thing ever. I'm going to start listening. And he's like making me pull my hair out. So sometimes you have to hear it several
Multiple
times. And from not your significant other.
Right.
He's smart, whatever. Well, I learned a lot today.
I learned that you went to Paris.
I almost forgot. Slipped my mind for a moment. But then I looked down at my hands that now are worn with Paris experience.
Stop talking.
I'm sorry, I'm so poetic. It's the Paris in me. These new wrinkles on my knuckles from holding gelato.
Gosh.
In Paris. I came back with no more language skills, though.
But that's okay, because I will tell you this. Cydni did come back with a lot of things that you learned about history and about art. Cydni was going crazy telling me stuff that she learned, and it was really fun.
I know. I think we came to get together to do a podcast, but I was like, and guess what? I have to tell you about this.
But it's cool because I like learning, even if it is having to listen to you about Paris one more time. But it's cool to learn.
We could dedicate a whole hour to me talking about Paris. This 30 minutes wasn't enough. It took getting over a fear of traveling, though, truly, to then go and experience what I got to experience. If I would have never took a leap of faith and jumped on a plane for 10 hours with 3 children, actually there was a soccer team, so there was a lot more than 3 children. But if I would have never done it, I don't think my soul could have been touched the way that it was touched in Paris.
Oh, good grief. So with that, our final thoughts.
What I've learned today is to rejuvenate myself with learning, to understand and recognize that I live in a time where information, knowledge is at my fingertips, and that together can create so much wisdom. And I also thought a lot about how many people we were surrounded by that have so many good stories and perspectives that I just don't think I take advantage of. This episode for me really did rejuvenate the passion to learn. And one thing I definitely learned about myself in the last couple of years, because I have spent a lot of time listening to speeches and I didn't write down anything that I learned. And so it was in one ear, out the other ear. So something that I've changed in the last couple of years is I started actually taking notes of the things that I'm learning. And that has made a significant difference, because one reason I get nervous about learning, especially something like a language, is because my memory is extremely short term. I've already forgot what we've talked about in this last hour. And I also struggle with long-term memory too, just for the record.
This is working out really well for both of us because I'm in the same boat.
Great. We'll just like always have the same episodes on repeat because we forgot that we talked about it.
Yeah.
But I think if you put in effort to learn, and not just learn, but apply and gain the wisdom, that you will have the freedom in your mind and in your heart that we were meant to have. And I'm going to take away from this the Frederick Douglass quote, that knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. I love that. It's really touched my heart. So thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome. I love that too. I actually had that quote on my classroom wall for years because it helps me to remember why I need to continue learning. And also, it's important to remember as well that virtue and knowledge combined, that is our great security.
For our challenge, we're going to challenge you to create your own bucket list of learning.
I love this idea. I think it's
I
so
love
fun.
it too. I haven't done it. I've thought about it for the last week of what I will put on there, but I think it's important to put things that you actually feel excited and enthusiastic about. One idea she also had was that if you have a partner to do it with, that's helpful to check in on each other. It could be a skill, it could be philosophy, whatever will get your soul excited. Learn something new. I will add this one part too. When I was listening to that interview, the next video was the history of toilets. And I thought, why not? Why not? I don't have to pick up the kids for half an hour. I'm going to learn about the toilets. And I thought it would be kind of funny. I spent 12 minutes watching a video about the history of toilet paper, and I learned so much. And I even wrote down notes. So I actually remember that they passed a sponge around and they did a community.
Ew, gross.
Yeah, they had toilets where they faced each other and they sat and talked about philosophy, and then they passed a sponge.
Who's they?
This was Roman.
Okay.
I think short-term memory. I don't know where my notes are. Also I think it was Greek. They used this little dish and they would write their enemy's name on the dish that they used to scoop their poo away. I thought that was so funny, right? But the reason I'm telling you this is that we were having a family scripture study night and someone said something about, I wonder what they used for toilet paper. It was my moment.
Your moment
Gave
to
them
shine.
5 minutes because it was literally 2 days. So it was fresh in my mind.
Yes.
And I was like, did you guys know? And I gave my children and husband a history of toilet paper. I would never have known if I had just taken that chance. And they all looked at me like I was psycho. And Rock said, did you have any idea that mom knew about why do you know about toilet paper? So I also thought, you know what? Why not learn about some stuff? Because you might have an opportunity to shine like I did about toilet paper and sponges and
Way to
the
take your
history.
moment
Thank you.
and share your wisdom.
So learn. It's fun. Create a bucket list of learning.
And speaking of,
Bucket list. Get it? Bucket,
I do.
toilet paper.
Yeah.
Just flowing together.
Oh, gosh. And as part of that bucket list, one of the things I thought of is we can maybe combine wisdom with the bucket list. Talk to a neighbor that's older or a grandparent or a great grandparent or an aunt or an uncle that has wisdom, someone that you look up to that they could impart some of that wisdom before it's too late. My aunt and uncles better watch out because I'm coming for you.
Go learn. Make your neuro pathways strong this week.
Go fight, win.
I'm forging my way through the tip top. I'm living my life through the drip drop. When eternity's plan, I just can't stop. I'm making my way through the drip drop.